Before a simple act of speaking a foreign language changes everything for a hotel cleaner, hit that subscribe button and like this video. And tell me in the comments, do you believe that moments of unexpected kindness or connection can change the course of your life? The hotel cleaner and the billionaire's secret. The sound of the alarm sliced through the stillness like 5 a.m. Again. Sofia Castillo reached for her old clock radio and silenced it with a groggy swipe, staring at the cracked ceiling of her small studio apartment in Queens. The flickering shadows from the street lamp outside danced on the peeling paint, reminding her of ghosts she hadn't invited, the weight of debt, the memory of her mother's illness that had devoured all their savings and left her drowning in bills. She exhaled deeply. Just another day, another chance to survive. She dragged herself into the tiny bathroom where the water was always ice cold. The hotline had stopped working weeks ago, and fixing it was a luxury she couldn't afford. As the icy splash hit her face, she repeated the mantra her grandmother had taught her in Spanish, a whisper of strength against the cold shock.
Un paso a la vez.
Poco a poco. One step at a time. Little by little. And now, she whispered it in English, trying to believe it, living one day at a time, one step forward. By 6:30 a.m., she was already clocking in through the back entrance of the Grand Astoria Hotel, a historic 5-star establishment in Manhattan's Upper East Side. Her name tag read Housekeeping Sofia. Today, her assignment was the 5th floor, miles of hallways, rows of luxurious rooms, the exclusive executive lounge. Her job was to be fast, focused, and invisible, just like they liked their cleaning staff. But Sofia Castillo was not who she seemed. Beneath the gray uniform and tired exterior, she held a degree in foreign languages from Hunter College, top of her class with honors. She was fluent in English, French, German, and most recently, Dutch, a language she'd fallen in love with thanks to a visiting lecturer from Amsterdam during her senior year. They had kept in touch, and he'd mentored her virtually ever since. A lifeline to the academic world she'd had to leave behind. Still, life had other plans. After her mother's passing and the mountain of medical debt, taking the first job she could find, housekeeping at the Grand Astoria, was a necessity. But she never stopped studying. Every evening after work, she would take the Q line to the public library in Brooklyn, where she used the free computers to keep practicing Dutch grammar exercises and vocabulary drills, clinging to her passion, to the possibility of a different future. This morning felt like any other until it didn't. While dusting the hallway near the penthouse suites, the most exclusive area, she heard footsteps approaching, crisp, purposeful strides. She turned slightly, lowering her gaze out of habit, an instinct honed by years of being invisible in the presence of wealth. 3 men in impeccably tailored suits strode past her. One of them stood out instantly, tall, dark-haired with distinguished silver streaks at his temples. A perfectly tailored navy suit, no tie, an aura of unmistakable authority. It was Julian Vance, CEO of Vance Holdings, the billionaire who owned the hotel. Everyone on staff knew who he was. They whispered stories of his rise from poverty, his obsession with perfection, his legendary silence when walking the corridors, his piercing blue eyes that seemed to see everything yet acknowledge nothing. He was almost mythic, a figure of immense power and detachment. He barely looked at her as he passed, or so she thought, blending back into the polished walls, becoming invisible once more. But sometimes the quietest moments hold the most unexpected turning points. Part 2. The overheard conversation. A few hours later, during her precious 30-minute lunch break, Sofia sat alone in the small utilitarian staff lounge near the hotel courtyard. The air was thick with the smell of reheated food and the low murmur of tired conversations. She was reheating rice and beans from a Tupperware container, the simple, familiar meal a small comfort. Her phone buzzed on the worn table. It was a message from Dr. Henrik Groot, her Dutch mentor. "You passed your certification. Call me when you can." Sofia's heart leaped, a sudden jolt of pure joy cutting through her exhaustion. The Dutch language certification she'd been studying for, poring over textbooks after grueling shifts, snatching moments at the library. She had passed. Heart pounding, tears stinging her eyes, she dialed his number. As soon as he answered, she blurted out the question in rapid, flawless Dutch, her excitement overflowing.
Heb ik het echt gehaald?
Did I really pass it? Dr. Groot's warm voice came through the phone.
Niet alleen geslaagd, Emily Sophia. Je hebt het fantastisch gedaan. Je bent nu officieel gecertificeerd op professioneel niveau in het Nederlands.
Not only passed, Sophia, you aced it. You are now officially certified at a professional fluency level in Dutch. A small sob escaped her, tears of relief and pure, unadulterated happiness streaming down her face. Years of studying before dawn, staying late at the library when her body screamed for rest, clinging to this dream against overwhelming odds. It had finally paid off. She was still talking to Peter Henrik in fluent, rapid Dutch, laughing through her tears, when the door creaked open behind her. She turned, her laughter dying instantly, freezing with shock. Julian Vance was standing there, one brow slightly raised, a look of surprise on his face. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said in English, his voice low, controlled, stepping further into the small room, utterly out of place amidst the worn furniture and staff lockers. His gaze was direct, assessing. Were you speaking Dutch?" Isabella Sophia leapt to her feet, fumbling with her phone, scrambling to end the call, her heart racing. "Yes, sir. I'm so sorry, sir. I was on break. It's fine," he interrupted calmly, his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, fixed on her. "Where did you learn it? I didn't realize we had staff with that kind of proficiency." I studied languages in college, sir," she stammered, avoiding his gaze, suddenly acutely aware of her uniform, the Tupperware container, the vast difference between them. It's my passion." She braced herself for a warning about personal calls, about disturbing the peace, about wasting time. But instead, after a pause that felt like an eternity, Ethan Julian simply asked, "What's your name?" "Sophia. Sophia Castillo." "Sophia?" he repeated, as if testing the sound of it, his gaze thoughtful. Then he gave a slow, almost imperceptible nod. "Thank you for your time, Sophia. Enjoy your lunch." And just like that, he left, closing the door softly behind him, leaving Isabella Sophia standing alone in the staff lounge, utterly stunned, her heart pounding against her ribs. She sank back onto the worn sofa, trying to convince herself it was nothing, just a curious moment, a passing interest from the owner. But deep down something whispered, a flicker of possibility, a tiny crack in the seemingly impenetrable wall of her life. It was all too much to process in one breath. But deep down, something else whispered, quieter, more insistent. This was just the beginning. Part 3, The Sudden Shift. The next day, Sophia arrived at the Grand Astoria for her shift, her mind still replaying the bizarre encounter in the staff lounge. She expected a warning, perhaps even dismissal, despite Julian's seemingly mild reaction. Instead, as she was clocking in through the back entrance, her supervisor called her aside, his expression unusually serious. "Sophia, Human Resources wants to see you. Right now." Sophia felt the air leave her lungs. HR? Was she in trouble? Had someone complained? Did it have something to do with Julian Vance? A wave of fear washed over her, the familiar dread of authority, of being reprimanded for something she didn't understand. She walked down the long corridor towards the main office, her steps hesitant, her heart pounding against her ribs like a drum. She knocked tentatively on the HR director's door. "Come in, Sophia. Sit down." Mr. Walter Hayes, the director of HR, looked up from his desk, his expression neutral, but his eyes held a hint of surprise, a puzzle he hadn't quite solved. Sophia sat down, her hands clutched tightly in her lap, bracing herself for the worst. I received a very unusual request this morning, Sophia," Mr. Hayes began, his voice calm, professional, yet the words he spoke felt utterly unreal. "Mr. Vance has requested that you be reassigned. Effective immediately." Sophia blinked, trying to process his words. "Reassigned? You'll be moving into a newly created position, Mr. Hayes continued, watching her reaction. "As an International Guest Relations Associate." It took a moment for the words to register, for their impossible meaning to sink in. International guest relations? Her? A cleaner? I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes. What does that mean? It means you'll be working directly with our high-profile international guests, he explained patiently, particularly those who don't speak English. You'll assist with translation, hospitality services, and cultural coordination. It's a role that requires a high level of linguistic and interpersonal skill. Sophia was speechless. This couldn't be real. Just yesterday she was scrubbing marble tiles, and today, the role comes with a significant salary increase. Mr. Hayes added, a faint, bemused smile touching his lips, as if even he found the request extraordinary. Roughly 3 times your current pay. Isabella Sophia's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. Is this real? Very real, Sophia, Mr. Hayes confirmed. Mr. Vance doesn't make random decisions. He specifically cited your linguistic talents. He closed the file on his desk. He says your talents are wasted where you are. He glanced at his watch. You start today. He'd like to see you in his office after lunch. As Sophia walked out of the HR office, her mind still spinning, the world around her seemed to have fundamentally changed. She passed by the same hallway she used to mop each morning. The opulent chandeliers, the velvet carpets, the high-end art pieces she once dusted. But today, everything looked different. The golden fixtures seemed brighter, the carpets richer. Even the polite hum of the elevators felt like part of a new world she had just stepped into. A world she never, ever thought she'd belong to. She pressed her hand against her chest, feeling the rapid, frantic beat of her heart. Why her? What had Julian Vance, the mysterious, detached billionaire, seen in a hotel cleaner speaking Dutch over her lunch break? And more importantly, what was he really looking for? It was all too much to process in one breath, too sudden, too impossible. But deep down, amidst the confusion and anxiety, something whispered, a tiny, hopeful voice she had almost forgotten. This was just the beginning. If you were Sophia, standing at the edge of a life-changing opportunity given by a mysterious billionaire, what would you do? Part 4. Stepping into the new role. Sophia stood in front of the full-length mirror in the staff dressing room, a transformation complete. No longer in her familiar gray cleaner's uniform, she was dressed in a tailored navy skirt, a crisp silk blouse, and soft leather heels. These weren't her clothes. They were new, provided by the hotel, and they fit her perfectly, as if someone had studied her measurements closely. Her name tag now read, International Guest Relations Associate, Sophia Castillo. The absurdity of it all made her chest tighten, a strange mix of elation and disbelief. How had her life flipped so quickly, so completely? Just 2 days ago, she'd been scrubbing marble tiles in silence, invisible, her dreams confined to late nights at the public library. Now, she was expected to sit across from diplomats and CEOs, interpreting complex conversations in multiple languages for one of the most powerful men in the hospitality industry. As she made her way towards the executive suite on the top floor where Julian Vance awaited her, Sophia's new heels clicked rhythmically on the polished tile floor, a sound that echoed the rapid beat of her heart. She walked past the opulent chandeliers and high-end art pieces she once dusted, her gaze no longer fixed on the floor out of habit, but meeting the eyes of passing guests and staff, who now looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. A bellhop, noticing her approach the executive suite doors, even stepped aside and opened the door for her, a small act of deference she had never experienced before. Inside, Julian stood near the panoramic window, phone in one hand, gaze fixed on the vast city skyline. He commanded. When he turned and saw her, his expression shifted subtly, the usual cold detachment softening into something that looked almost proud. "You look the part," he said, setting the phone down, his voice low, appraising. Sophia hesitated, searching for the right words to describe the whirlwind of emotions inside her. It feels like I woke up in someone else's life." Julian gave a slight laugh, the kind that carried more sadness than joy, a sound that hinted at a hidden depth beneath his composed exterior. Maybe you're just waking up in your own, Sophia. They sat across from each other on sleek leather chairs, the silence in the luxurious suite broken only by the soft hum of the city far below. He poured 2 coffees himself, no assistance, no formalities, a simple gesture that felt oddly personal. For a moment, they were just 2 people in a quiet room high above the city. Let me be honest, Sophia, Julian said, his voice lower now, his gaze direct, piercing through her uncertainty. I didn't create this position for anyone else. I created it for you, because I saw something. Actually, I heard something that made me realize I've been overlooking the most talented people in this building, by simply not looking beyond the surface. Sophia's stomach fluttered. She wanted desperately to trust him, to believe his words were sincere, but years of hardship and disappointment had made her cautious, wary of promises that seemed too good to be true. Still, there was something in his eyes, a quiet conviction, a hint of unexpected vulnerability that kept her seated, listening. Julian leaned forward slightly. I need your help this afternoon. There's a group of Dutch investors flying in. They're considering financing our first major European expansion. He paused, the weight of the project evident.
Amsterdam.
I need someone who not only understands both languages, but who understands people. Someone with instinct, with empathy. I've never been in a negotiation like that, sir, she said, the fear of failure creeping into her voice. I don't know the etiquette. I could mess everything up. I'm not hiring you for etiquette, Sophia, Julian said firmly, his gaze unwavering. I'm hiring you for empathy, for instinct, for your ability to connect. Everything else, we can teach you. He smiled, a genuine, rare smile that reached his eyes. What you have, that can't be taught. The weight of that compliment, of his unexpected faith in her, silenced her doubts for a moment. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and a fierce determination to prove him right. I'll do my best, Mr. Vance. Part 5, The Test and the Triumph. Later that day, in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the bustling city and the winding river, Sophia stood beside Julian as the foreign investors arrived. They were tall, sharp-eyed men in impeccable suits, with firm handshakes and unreadable smiles, representatives of serious wealth and power. Taking a deep breath, Sophia stepped forward and introduced herself in fluent, confident Dutch. The room visibly relaxed. The initial tension of potential misunderstandings, of navigating language barriers, eased immediately. Throughout the meeting, she translated with grace and precision, subtly adapting tones and cultural nuances, ensuring both sides were at ease, understanding not just the words, but the underlying intentions. At one point, one of the investors asked Julian a question that was clearly a test, designed to probe his understanding of the European market and cultural sensitivities. Before Julian could answer, Sophia gently stepped in, her voice respectful, explaining the nuance of the cultural context behind the question, offering a perspective that bridged the gap. The man smiled, a genuine, approving smile. He leaned back in his chair and gave a slow, silent nod, a quiet victory. By the end of the meeting, the atmosphere was optimistic, the potential deal closer than ever. As they walked out of the conference room, the door closing behind them, Julian was beaming, his face alight with success and relief. You saved the entire deal, Sophia, he whispered, his voice filled with immense gratitude. I owe you more than I can possibly say. They stepped into the elevator, alone for the first time since before the meeting began. Sophia exhaled deeply, the adrenaline fading, leaving her feeling both exhilarated and exhausted. I didn't think I could do it, Mr. Vance. I did, he replied, his gaze meeting hers, filled with a conviction that surprised her. I saw it the moment I heard you speaking Dutch over your lunch break, like it was the most normal thing in the world. That's not just learning a language, Sophia. That's mastering it. That's dedication. There was a pause, heavy with things unsaid, the silence of the elevator amplifying the unspoken connection that had grown between them. Then Julian spoke again, his voice quieter now, hesitant, stepping onto more personal ground. I have a place I like to go when I need to think. To remember who I am, or figure out who I'm becoming. He looked at her directly, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. Would you come with me tonight? No obligations, no expectations. Just two people talking. Isabella Sophia hesitated. She had never been invited into a space like that, personal, intimate, outside the boundaries of work. Years of self-protection, of maintaining distance, urged her to say no. But something inside her, a voice deeper and more insistent than her fear, said yes before she could think too hard. From the staff lounge to exclusive meetings, Sophia is proving herself invaluable. But what happens when the lines between professional and personal begin to blur? What secrets will Julian share? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected opportunities, hit like and subscribe. Part 6, Beyond Work Hours. That evening, Julian drove them away from the neon and glass towers of the city center, towards a secluded rooftop garden on the edge of the city, a hidden oasis of calm high above the urban sprawl. It was quiet up there, the hum of traffic far below reduced to a distant murmur. The stars were faint in the city sky but present, a reminder of a larger universe. A cool breeze moved through Sophia's hair as she stepped out of the car, a stark contrast to the temperature-controlled air of the hotel. Do you come here often? She asked, the simple question opening a door to a more personal conversation. Only when I need to remember who I am, he replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Or figure out who I'm becoming. They sat on a bench overlooking the city lights, sipping wine from paper cups, the simplicity of the moment a surprising contrast to the complexity of their lives. Julian began to talk, hesitantly at first, then with a quiet honesty that disarmed her. He talked about his early days, about how he once cleaned rooms too, in a hotel not much different from this one. He talked about his father, a janitor, a hardworking man with a simple dream, to open his own small hotel someday. A dream Julian had made real, building an empire from that initial ambition, but a dream he had never shared with anyone in his polished, corporate world. I've made deals that earned millions, he confessed, his voice low, a hint of weariness in it. But never made me feel what I felt today, Sophia, watching you work, watching you connect. Sophia looked at him, her eyes wide, seeing the man behind the myth, the unexpected vulnerability. Why are you telling me this, Mr. Vance? Julian, he corrected gently, his gaze meeting hers. He gestured between them, to the quiet space, the shared wine, the conversation. Because I think this might be the first honest thing I've had in years. The words hung in the air, tender, unspoken, charged with a meaning neither dared fully acknowledge. As she stared out at the lights of the city below, something shifted within her. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving. She was seen. She was needed. And maybe, just maybe, she was cared for not for what she could do, but for who she was. Part 7. Finding Honesty and Shared Pasts. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings, high-stakes negotiations, and late-night strategy sessions. Sophia was no longer just the woman behind the cleaning cart. She had become Julian's indispensable right hand and interpreter, an advisor whose insights he increasingly relied on. Her transformation wasn't just professional. She felt it in how people now looked at her, the respect in their eyes, the way she carried herself with a new confidence. The hotel no longer seemed like a palace she cleaned, but a world she belonged to, a world she was actively shaping. Yet, beneath the confidence, there was always a quiet tremor, a voice in her mind whispering, what if all this vanishes as quickly as it appeared? What is this really about? That fear clung to her, a silent test of the fragile reality she was now living. This fear was most potent when she and Julian would talk late into the evening, their conversations drifting from logistics to life, from business strategies to personal beliefs. He never crossed a line inappropriately, never made her feel uncomfortable, and maybe that was what made it more dangerous. The way he saw her, not as a temporary escape or a calculated asset, but as someone who mattered, as a person with depth and dreams, left her vulnerable in a way success never had. One evening after a particularly long day, Filled with back-to-back meetings and complex translation tasks, Julian invited her to dinner again. This time, not in a corner of the hotel, but at his home. She hesitated. Even as she said yes, her heart pounding with anticipation and lingering apprehension. The car ride was quiet, filled with unspoken questions and the subtle shift in their dynamic outside the professional sphere. His house was nothing like she imagined. Not the cold, modern castle of a billionaire from the magazines, but a warm, lived-in home tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, filled with books, old photographs, and the faint, comforting scent of cedar wood. He cooked, not a chef, not a delivery. Just Julian in a simple button-down shirt and rolled sleeves making pasta from scratch, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Over dinner, the distance between them dissolved completely. They spoke not as boss and employee, not even as two professionals, but as two souls who had lived through enough to stop pretending, to stop hiding. Julian talked more about his father, the janitor, and his quiet dream of owning a hotel, a dream Julian had made real. But the personal story behind the empire was something he had never shared with anyone before. He talked about how building his empire had cost him more than he liked to admit, the sacrifices, the loneliness at the top. Sophia, in turn, told him more about her mother, about the photo she still kept taped to her mirror, her mother's smiling face, a constant reminder of why she fought so hard. She talked about how every step forward she took, every achievement, felt like whispering to her mother's memory, "I'm doing it, Mom. I'm still standing." After dinner, they sat on the porch as a quiet rain began to fall, the sound a gentle backdrop to the deepening intimacy of their conversation. The air between them pulsed with everything they weren't saying, with the unspoken emotions that were growing too big to ignore. Part 8. Deeper Connection and Vulnerability. This section covers the acknowledgement of feelings and fears on the porch after dinner. This was covered in Part 7 in the previous turn. I will keep it here for flow before the next section. After dinner, Sophia and Julian sat on the porch as a quiet rain began to fall, the sound a gentle backdrop to the deepening intimacy of their conversation. The air between them pulsed with everything they weren't saying, with the unspoken emotions that were growing too big to ignore. Then, finally, Julian broke the silence, his voice soft, vulnerable, acknowledging the shift that had occurred. "I'm not sure when it happened," he said, his eyes fixed on the horizon, reflecting on the unexpected turn his life had taken. "But somewhere along the way, Sophia, I stopped seeing you as someone I simply admire for your talents, and started seeing you as someone I don't want to imagine this life without." Sophia turned to him, her breath caught halfway, her heart pounding against her ribs. She wanted to speak, to be clear, to say what she felt in return. But there were no perfect words for a moment as raw and significant as this. "Julian," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is real for me, too," she said, her voice firmer now, acknowledging the connection that went beyond work, beyond convenience. "But I've worked so hard to be taken seriously. If anyone finds out, if our worlds collide publicly," she hesitated, the fear she had carried for years resurfacing. "They'll say what they always say, that I don't belong here, that you only chose me because of something other than my mind, something other than my merit." Julian reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady, his gaze meeting hers with unwavering conviction. He understood her fear, the hard-won pride she carried. "And you and I will know the truth, Sophia," he replied, his voice firm, a quiet promise. "We'll know why this is real." He held her gaze, his expression serious. "If you choose to walk away from this, to protect what you've built, to protect your reputation, I'll understand, and I'll respect that." He paused, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "But if you choose to stay, Sophia, if you choose to build something with me, I promise you, no one will ever doubt your worth. Not while I'm still breathing." In that moment, she saw him not just as a man of immense power and wealth, but as a man of profound courage and integrity, offering not just love, but a true partnership, a shield against the very judgments she feared. She reached for his hand, her eyes steady, clear, her heart making the choice before her mind could analyze the risks. I'm not walking away, Julian. Part 9, Deeper Connection and Vulnerability. This section covers the time period after the porch conversation where their relationship develops and she still fears losing it. It was covered in Part 8 in the previous turn. I will skip to the next distinct phase, which is Part 10, the public reveal. Part 10, Acknowledging Feelings and Fear. This section covers the invitation to dinner at his home and the conversation on the porch where he confesses feelings and she responds with her fears. It was covered in Parts 7 and 8 in the previous turn. I will skip to the next distinct phase, which is Part 12, the public commitment. Part 11, Partnership in Love. This section covers the explicit confirmation of feelings and the acceptance of partnership, leading to the public reveal. It was covered in Part 8 in the previous turn. I will skip to the next distinct phase, which is Part 12, the public commitment. Part 12, Public Commitment and Success. The next morning, the entire Grand Astoria Hotel buzzed with news. Not just the whispers among the staff, but headlines across hospitality blogs and financial news sites. Vance Holdings had closed a record-breaking deal to expand into Europe, securing financing for their first hotel in Amsterdam. And Sofia Castillo, the former cleaner turned international guest relations associate, was cited by the investors as being crucial to the negotiation's success. She was promoted again, her ascent rapid and undeniable. This time as Director of International Strategy. But what truly made headlines, what stunned everyone, was the announcement that followed just weeks later. Julian Vance, the notoriously private mogul, the Ice King, had publicly introduced Sofia, not just as his business partner, but as the woman he was building a future with. Critics whispered, gossip swirled, dissecting their unlikely relationship, questioning motives. But it all faded when 6 months later, the ribbon was cut on their Amsterdam hotel. Sofia stood beside Julian, not just as a colleague, but as an equal partner, as cameras flashed and reporters cheered. The woman who once mopped the marble floors of a luxury hotel was now overseeing deals, mentoring teams, flying between continents. Her life transformed beyond recognition. But she had not changed. Not where it mattered. Her authenticity, her empathy, her quiet strength remained her core. That evening, back in their suite overlooking the Amsterdam canals, the city lights reflecting on the water, Julian pulled her into a quiet embrace. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice soft. Sofia looked at him, tears filling her eyes, tears of profound gratitude, of disbelief, of overwhelming love. "About everything it took to get here," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "About all the late nights, the fear, the moments I wanted to give up before that one phone call." She leaned into him, the solidity of his presence grounding her. "About how love can find you when you least expect it, when you're just sitting in a staff lounge, reheating leftovers." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "And about how talent and courage can be found when you stop overlooking the people right in front of you." For a moment, nothing else existed but them, high above the city lights, in a world they had built together. "Now, let me ask you this. After everything Sofia went through, what do you think made the biggest difference in her journey? Was it Julian's support, her own resilience, or that one moment of courage when she answered a call in a foreign language, daring to speak her passion aloud? And most of all, did this story touch your heart? If it did, drop a 100 in the comments to show your love. Let us know which country you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video with someone who still believes in dreams that come true at the most unexpected time. Part 13, Reflections and Thematic Questions. This part reflects on Sofia's journey and the factors contributing to her success, posing thematic questions. It was covered within Part 12 in the previous turn. I will skip to the final phase. Part 14, Epilogue and Final Message. Epilogue. 2 years later, the Amsterdam Hotel was a resounding success, a testament to the partnership between Julian Vance and Sofia Castillo. Sofia, now a recognized figure in the international hospitality world, had never forgotten where she came from. Her past wasn't something to hide. It was the foundation of her strength. She championed programs within Vance Holdings to support employees pursuing education and skills training, ensuring that talent buried by circumstance would never be overlooked. Julian, no longer the detached Ice King, worked alongside her, his ambition tempered by a profound sense of purpose and connection. Their life was a blend of luxury and grounded reality. Flights between continents for business meetings, yes, but also quiet evenings at home, making pasta from scratch, reflecting on their journey. Sophia continued to study, not for necessity anymore, but for joy, mentoring young people who reminded her of her past self. Their story wasn't a fairy tale where a cleaner magically became a princess. It was a story of resilience meeting recognition, of hard work being rewarded, of courage in vulnerability, and of love finding two people when they least expected it. Julian had found a partner who saw him, not the fortune. Sophia had found a partner who saw her, not the uniform or the debt. They had built something real, together, brick by brick, moment by moment. And that's the story of Sophia and Julian. A journey from hidden talent and unexpected encounter to profound partnership, earned success, and a love that sees beyond the surface. It's a reminder that resilience, courage, and a single moment of being seen can change everything. If this story touched your heart, made you tear up, or simply reminded you that the greatest wealth is the connection we share, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and comment your favorite part below. Don't forget to subscribe to soul-stirring stories for more unforgettable tales of hope, perseverance, and finding belonging in unexpected places. Thank you for being part of our community. We'll see you in the next one for another story that touches the heart.